There's a phenomenon that Freud identified over a century ago that now manifests itself brutally in modern romantic dynamics. It's something few men can name, but everyone has experienced firsthand. I'm talking about female sadism disguised as love, the psychic cruelty it exerts on those who desire it most. And no, this isn't cheap romanticization or hate speech. It's pure psychoanalysis applied to the reality you live every day. Freud was categorical in stating that in the female unconscious, there exists a sadistic drive that finds its greatest pleasure in the destruction of male desire. She doesn't just want to be desired, she wants to see you suffer for desiring her. The greater your passion, the greater her pleasure in denying you, frustrating you, and manipulating you. It's a psychic game where your suffering is literally fuel for her ego. And when I say fuel, I'm not being metaphorical, I'm being literal. Male suffering is what fuels her shattered self-esteem. It's what inflates her narcissistic ego. It's what gives meaning to her pathetic existence. Observe the pattern carefully. She approaches, sparks your interest, makes you fall in love, and then the real game begins. The messages that take hours to respond, the last-minute cancelled dates, the promises that are never kept, the moments of coldness interspersed with crumbs of affection. You think it's her insecurity, her fear of giving in, her past trauma. But the psychoanalytic truth is much darker. She's delighting in your desperation. Every time you anxiously await an answer, every time you wonder what you did wrong, every time you doubt your own worth, she takes indescribable pleasure. It's as if she's watching a movie where you're the suffering protagonist and she's the cruel director orchestrating each scene of pain. Freud called this inverted moral masochism. While the masochist seeks his own suffering, she projects that suffering onto you and feeds on it like an emotional vampire. Every desperate message you send, every attempt to win her back, every moment you humiliate yourself begging for attention is like a dose of heroin for the wounded female ego. She doesn't want to solve the problem. She wants to perpetuate it, because it's from it that she derives her value. It's from the emotional chaos you experience because of her that she constructs her own identity. Without men suffering for her, she doesn't know who she is. Without male tears to bathe her, she loses the meaning of her own existence. The modern woman has learned to turn male love into currency to inflate her self-esteem, shattered by the thousands of men who used and discarded her before you came into her life. How many men in love can she keep on a tightrope? How many can she make dance in the palm of her hand? How many can she make suffer without giving anything in return? This is the true measure of her power in the modern world. It's not professional success. It's not personal achievements. It's the number of men she can psychologically torture while they beg for crumbs of her affection. It's a macabre collection of broken hearts, an art gallery where each painting is a man destroyed by her cruelty. Freud identified that this has deep roots in the unresolved female Oedipus complex. A girl who has failed to properly develop her relationship with her father carries into adulthood a compulsive need to punish all men who occupy the paternal role in her psyche. And who occupies that role? Precisely the one who loves her, who desires her, who places her on a pedestal. He becomes the father she wants to punish, and the punishment comes disguised as tough love, as an independent woman, as someone who doesn't give in easily. But make no mistake, behind the mask of independence lies a wounded child wanting to make all men pay for the sins of the absent father, the father who rejected her, the father who didn't love her the way she needed to be loved. But let's delve deeper into this creature's psychic structure. The woman who finds pleasure in torturing men in love is, in fact, trying to resolve a primitive narcissistic trauma that has plagued her since her earliest years. She was rejected, abandoned, or devalued at some fundamental moment in her psychic formation. Perhaps by her parents, perhaps by her first love, perhaps by a society that didn't validate her as she believed she deserved. Now, each man who falls in love with her represents an opportunity to reverse this traumatic dynamic. She will do to you what was done to her. She will reject, abandon, and devalue. It's a compulsion to repeat, but this time she's in control. This time, she's the predator, not the prey. This time, she's the one causing pain, not the one receiving it. The perverse thing is that she doesn't do this consciously. On a conscious level, she may even feel sorry for you. She may even think you're a nice guy. She may even recognize that you don't deserve the treatment you're receiving. But unconsciously, there's a non-stop destruction machine, programmed to identify male vulnerabilities and exploit them to the limit. Every display of love from you is interpreted as weakness. Every romantic gesture is seen as a pathetic attempt at control. Every "I love you" is translated as "I'm a desperate loser." And the more pathetic she considers you, the greater the sadistic pleasure she feels, the greater the perverse excitement that takes over her sick psyche. Freud explained that the female sadistic drive manifests primarily through calculated deprivation. She won't hit you. She won't insult you in front of others. She won't create dramatic scenes that expose her for the psychopath she truly is. She's much more sophisticated than that. She will simply deprive you of what you desire most: herself, her presence, her attention, her body, her affection, her validation. Everything becomes a bargaining chip in a perverse game where only she knows the rules, and the rules change. Whenever you're about to win, it's like playing chess against an opponent who can move the pieces however they want, whenever they want, however they want. Have you noticed how she always has an excuse up her sleeve? There's always a problem preventing her from giving herself completely. There's always an ex who still bothers her. There's always an insecurity that needs to be worked through. There's always a difficult phase in her life. There are always family issues to resolve. There are always personal goals that can't be interrupted by love. These are carefully constructed narratives to justify her sadistic behavior. She needs a seemingly valid reason to keep torturing you. Otherwise, even she would feel bad about her own cruelty. The excuse is what allows her to continue being cruel, maintaining the image of a misunderstood woman instead of embracing her true identity as an emotional tormentor. The most disturbing truth is that she doesn't want her problems solved. If the problems were solved, if the issues were resolved, if the traumas were healed, she would lose the excuse to keep you in a position of constant suffering. That's why every attempt you make to help her is met with resistance disguised as gratitude. That's why she always creates new obstacles just as the old ones are being overcome. That's why she turns every solution you offer into a new, even more complex problem. She doesn't want a cure, she wants chronic illness, because it's from illness that she derives the morbid pleasure of seeing you suffer. A cure would mean the end of the game, and the game is the only thing that gives meaning to her empty life. And here comes the most perverse and calculating part of this whole sinister dynamic. She needs you to stay in love so she can continue to enjoy denying you. If you give up, if you move on, if you stop pining for her, the game completely loses its appeal. So, whenever you're about to give up, whenever you show you're losing interest, whenever you start looking at other women, she comes back with a vengeance. She gives you exactly what you've been begging for months. She makes you believe that she's finally made up her mind, that she'll finally give in, that you'll finally have the relationship you've always dreamed of. But it's pure trickery, brother. It's what Freud called intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful psychological conditioning tool ever discovered. The casino addict doesn't stop gambling because he sometimes wins. If he never won, he'd stop quickly. If he always won, he'd also stop due to a lack of excitement. He keeps gambling because he wins little, wins rarely, but wins at the right time to keep hope alive. It works exactly the same way. It gives you crumbs of affection at just the right time to keep you addicted to its suffering. It's a perfect science of emotional manipulation, a doctorate in applied cruelty. Freud said that female sadism is infinitely more refined and dangerous than male sadism precisely because of this psychological sophistication. The sadistic man is brutal, obvious, easy to identify and combat. You see it coming from afar, you can defend yourself, you can escape. The sadistic woman is sophisticated, subtle, almost imperceptible until it's too late. She destroys you with a smile, annihilates you with seemingly affectionate words, psychologically kills you while pretending to love you more than anything in life. And the worst part is that she manages to convince you that the fault is entirely yours. that you're not being patient enough, that you don't understand her delicate moment, that you're being selfish and insensitive for wanting reciprocity in a relationship. The structure of psychological punishment is always the same, following a script she masters by heart. First, she seduces you with complete intensity, makes you feel like the most special man in the world, gives you the impression that you have a unique and predestined connection. Then she systematically frustrates you, denies what she promised, creates obstacles where none existed, transforms certainties into doubts. And finally, she blames you for the frustration she herself created, convincing you that if you were better, if you were more this or that, she wouldn't need to behave this way. It's a vicious cycle where you always lose, but she always manages to convince you that the fundamental problem lies with you, never with her. And do you know what the greatest scientific proof is? That this is pure sadism and not female insecurity. Pay close attention to how she reacts when you finally break free from her clutches, when you stop chasing, when you stop begging for attention, when you find someone else who truly values you. She completely freaks out. She can't accept that she's lost control over her suffering, that she's lost the source of sadistic pleasure you represented. Suddenly, like magic, all those insoluble problems that prevented her from surrendering herself disappear overnight. Suddenly, she's completely available and ready to give you everything she's denied you for months or years. But by then it's too late, isn't it? Or at least it should be if you had any semblance of self-respect. Because if you go back, if you fall for her manipulative scheme again, the cycle begins again with a vengeance. She's learned that you're easy to manipulate, that you always return like an abandoned dog, that you always forgive her cruelties in exchange for crumbs of affection. And now she has even more psychological ammunition to torture you, because she's discovered you're too weak to resist her perverse game. You've officially become her emotional sex toy, always available to be used whenever she needs a boost of power. Freud warned that a man in love automatically becomes a masochist in a relationship with a sadistic woman. It's an inevitable psychic transformation. You develop a chemical dependence on the suffering she causes, a veritable withdrawal syndrome when she's not torturing you. You begin to interpret pain as proof of true love, cruelty as a test of dedication, coldness as a romantic challenge to be overcome. You become addicted to suffering, and she becomes addicted to causing suffering. It's an unhealthy symbiosis, where both lose their humanity, but she at least emerges with a temporarily inflated ego. The woman who finds pleasure in punishing men in love is always surrounded by men suffering for her in various stages of psychological destruction. She's like a compulsive collector of broken souls, an expert in manufacturing male depression. Every broken heart is a badge of honor on her chest. Every tear shed for her sake is a golden trophy on the shelf of her cruelty. She doesn't want strong, independent men who have other options and other sources of validation. She wants emotionally dependent, needy men who make her the absolute center of the universe so they can have the sadistic pleasure of denying this self-cultivated centrality. And when you finally understand the macabre game, when you finally see the sadistic structure behind her seemingly innocent behavior, something profound shifts within you. You stop romanticizing her cruelty, you stop justifying her calculated coldness, you stop accepting the pathetic crumbs she offers after depriving you of what truly matters. You understand with crystal clarity that this isn't tough love, it's refined sadism. This isn't an independent, empowered woman. This is an emotional psychopath disguised as a misunderstood princess. This isn't someone who doesn't give in easily because they have high standards. This is someone who finds morbid pleasure in the suffering of others and has turned it into a perverse art. The cure for this destructive dynamic isn't trying to understand her better. It's not being more patient with her problems. It's not showing more love or dedication. The cure is completely cutting off the source of suffering that feeds the monster within her. It's denying her the pleasure she obsessively seeks in her pain. It's showing that you're not at all willing to fuel her sick ego. It's moving on definitively to a woman who values love instead of methodically destroying it, who builds instead of tearing it down, who heals instead of infecting with emotional poison. Freud was absolutely clear on this point. Not every woman is like this, but every woman carries this latent sadistic power in her, unconscious. The crucial difference lies in the upbringing she received, the family structure in which she was raised, and the healthy or pathological processing of the inevitable childhood traumas. A psychologically healthy woman can channel this natural drive constructively, transforming it into creative strength and determination. A sick, traumatized, unresolved woman transforms this drive into an industrial machine for destroying passionate men. But there's another factor Freud identified. That's crucial to understanding the current epidemic. Modern women have been taught by society that torturing men is empowerment, that withholding affection is independence, that causing suffering is a demonstration of self-worth, that the more men she can emotionally destroy, the more powerful she is. Today's culture not only allows this sadistic behavior, it actively encourages it. It glorifies female cruelty and demonizes male vulnerability. And you, who are watching this video, probably, because you painfully recognize the pattern in your own life, need to understand a brutal truth. There is no cure for those who find genuine pleasure in the suffering of others. There is no therapy that works for those who don't want to change. There is no love that can transform those who use love as a weapon of destruction. There is no patience that can solve those who feed on the impatience of others. Sadism is a crystallized psychic structure that can only be broken by itself, from the inside out, through a process of self-knowledge that it has no interest in undertaking. In fact, she's not just disinterested, she actively averse to self-knowledge, because self-knowledge would mean recognizing her own monstrosity, and that would completely destroy the victim narrative she's constructed to justify her cruelty. It's much more comfortable to continue believing she's just a misunderstood woman, wounded by the past, who needs time and patience to heal. The truth that she's an emotional predator who feeds on male suffering is unacceptable to her psyche. So immediately stop trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Stop trying to love someone who uses their love as a sophisticated instrument of torture. Stop trying to build something beautiful with someone who only knows how to demolish and destroy. Your suffering won't heal her. It will only feed the monster inside her. Your pain won't sensitize her to reciprocity. It will only excite her to cause even more pain. Your love won't transform her into a better person. It will only addict her to causing more suffering because that is the source of her pleasure. Freud denounces her mercilessly, and I'm here to translate that denunciation into language you understand. She's not confused about her feelings. She's perfectly aware of the cruelty she practices. She's not afraid to surrender. She's happy to deny it. She doesn't need more time to make up her mind. She needs your suffering to feel alive. And as long as you continue to provide that suffering like a useful idiot, she will continue to delight in the agony she manages to inflict on you. But let's go beyond identifying the problem. Let's talk about the psychological consequences for you who have become involved with this creature. A man who has spent months or years being tortured by an emotional sadist develops profound scars that can last decades. First, you completely lose the ability to trust your own instincts. You learn to doubt everything you feel because she taught you that your feelings are always exaggerated, always inappropriate, always problematic. Second, you develop chronic anxiety in relationships, always waiting for the next rejection, the next humiliation, the next abandonment. Third, and perhaps most seriously, you internalize her cruelty as if it were true about you. You begin to believe that you truly don't deserve love, that you truly are inadequate, that you truly need to beg for affection. She has managed to implant in your mind the same demons that inhabit hers. You become a reflection of her mental illness. Fourth, you lose the ability to recognize true love when it appears in your life. Healthy women who treat you well begin to seem suspicious, boring, and dull, because you have become addicted to the emotional roller coaster of psychological torture. Recovering from a relationship with an emotional sadist is a long and painful process that requires full awareness of what happened. You need to understand that you are a victim of systematic psychological abuse. You need to acknowledge that you developed a Stockholm syndrome, where you fell in love with your own tormentor. You need to accept that she wasn't a difficult or complicated woman. She was a predator who identified your vulnerabilities and methodically exploited them for her own sadistic pleasure. And here comes an aspect that few men can accept. You're to blame too. Not for her cruelty, that's her sole responsibility. But for allowing it to happen. Guilt for ignoring the obvious signs. Guilt for accepting crumbs when you deserved a feast. Guilt for betraying yourselves in the name of a love that never truly existed. She may be a psychopath, but you chose to stay. She may be cruel, but you chose to return. She may be manipulative, but you chose to believe her lies. Freud explained that there is a type of man who is naturally attracted to sadistic women. These men carry a deep inferiority complex, usually stemming from a relationship with a domineering and castrating mother. These men confuse suffering with love because they learned from an early age that love means pain. To them, a woman who treats them well seems fake, lacking in authenticity, because authenticity was defined as cruelty in their early relationships. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, if you realize you're always involved with women who make you suffer, the problem isn't just them. The problem lies in the psychological programming you've carried since childhood. You need therapy. You need to understand why you're attracted to those who destroy you. You need to reprogram your own definition of love. Otherwise, you'll spend your whole life jumping from one sadist to the next, always thinking this time will be different. But there is hope, brother. There is a cure for this masochistic compulsion. The first step is to recognize that you have the right to be loved without suffering, that you deserve reciprocity, respect, and consideration. The second step is to develop uncompromising standards for how you want to be treated. The third step is to apply these standards from the first encounter, without exceptions, without excuses, without second chances for those who show signs of sadism. A healthy woman will respect your boundaries and even admire you for having them. A sadistic woman will try to break your boundaries and disappear from your life when she realizes she can't. It's a perfect filter that separates the wheat from the chaff, that distinguishes those who want to love from those who want to torture. Use this filter religiously and never fall into the trap of an emotional predator again. Freud denounces it, psychoanalysis exposes it, and reality confirms it. There is a hidden, morbid, perverse pleasure that some women feel when punishing men in love. It's real, it's systematic, it's calculated. It's not insecurity, it's not unresolved trauma, it's not a difficult phase in life. It's refined sadism disguised as feminine emotional complexity. Recognize it, name it, run from it. Your lives depend on this awareness. This channel doesn't romanticize toxic behavior, idealize destructive relationships, or offer couples therapy for emotional psychopaths. This is pure psychoanalysis, unfiltered truth and unvarnished reality. If you want to continue living in the fantasy that love conquers all, look elsewhere. If you want to understand the psychic structures that govern modern relationships, you're in the right place. Freud doesn't lie, doesn't romanticize, and doesn't turn a blind eye to human cruelty. He observes, names, and exposes. And we're here to translate these truths into a language you understand. Subscribe if you have the courage to face the stark reality of modern relationships.